Hey everybody, I'm Jeff. This is Jeff Ball Photography's YouTube channel, and thanks so much for stopping by. Look, today's going to be real quick. What I wanted to do is just share with you some of the planning I'm putting in on Comet 2020 F8 SWAN. And so what we're going to look at today, if you're an astrophotographer or if you're just a visual observer, here's some of the things to think about over the next probably 3 weeks-ish to take into consideration if you want to try to take a photograph of this comet or at least catch it visually. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at when and where to find the comet. We're going to look at the focal lengths that you should probably be considering, some of the exposure times, both in sub-exposures and total exposure time, the potential for a landscape acquisition. So we're going to take a look at all of that. Okay, so let's do a when and where we're going to find Comet 2020 F8 SWAN. From here on, I'll just call it Comet SWAN. I'm in middle latitudes here, 38 degrees, so take that for what it's worth. You're going to have to adjust for yours. I know the northern latitude folks are really battling a much earlier twilight period than what we are. This is going to be a delicate fine line, and I'll show you here in the planetarium program in a second how this really works. But it's a fine line. Each passing day until June sees a slightly higher comet, but an earlier and earlier twilight by a minute plus a day. What are we talking about time periods here? Let's dive into the planetarium software and I'll show you what this looks like. Now, what I have it set up here for, starting May 12th at 4:38 a.m., you can see it just barely gets above the horizon. If we start progressing by the minute, you can see how the twilight starts to come in. I don't believe I'm going to be able to image. I'm pretty sure astronomical twilight is over by most of the imaging windows we're talking about here. So you're talking at 5 o'clock. We're well into twilight. And just out of curiosity, we will check the object information. And you can see here that we are just barely an altitude of 8 degrees off of the horizon. This is really close to the horizon. You're going to have great conditions all the way down to the horizon, and obviously a view of the horizon. Now, the tail could brighten to the point where a twilight shot would be cool, and maybe it'll show up in twilight. So we don't know, but we're not going to have much time to image this before it gets bright. We're going to continue to progress here. You can see here we're getting well into twilight. Sunrise is on the verge here, and so now we're probably almost maybe 15 degrees above the horizon, so this never gets very high. So this is May 12th. So let me go back here to a better imaging window, say around 4. We're still in at least some darkness here. We're in nautical twilight probably at 4:50. So let's go forward from May 12th. Let's see what this progresses like by date. So you can see Comet SWAN starts to move toward the northeast. You can also see the horizon brightening with each passing day at the same time. Now, this will continue all the way. We're at May 20th. You can see here now, May 29th, 30th, really starts to dip down below the horizon, at least for my my latitude. So there's Comet F8 SWAN as it traverses from May 12th to May 29th at my latitude. I'm looking at is May 12th through the end of May. We have about 2 weeks to work with this, and you're going to have to factor in weather opportunities. The moon is a little bit of a factor early in that period. There's a waning crescent that will come into play, but I'm just going to ignore that right now because it really becomes, for me, a function of weather. And I've already started planning alternative locations in case my weather doesn't cooperate, because one of the things I do, I try to get the image as early as possible within the imaging window, because we never know if we're going to get another option at this, and we don't know if this comet could break up. So May 12th, I believe, is the closest approach to Earth. So let's really keep that in mind as we're planning our photographic exploration of Comet SWAN. Now there's also an evening opportunity to capture SWAN. Again, it's another balance of twilight, darkness, and Comet's altitude above the horizon. So let me show you, really starting around May 23rd, looking to the northwest. And if your view of the northwest is better than your view of the east-northeast, then maybe go with this northwest option that you have in the evening. It's a little smaller window. Let me progress here from May 23rd. We'll follow it through the 26th. You see there, May 28th, around May 28th, 29th, that's probably around 10 p.m. That's probably a pretty good option right there. Let's just check to see if we can see that altitude. That's 8 degrees above the horizon. That's about as good as we get right there. So that's 8 degrees above the horizon on May 28th at 10 p.m. So there's a nice northwest opportunity, especially if that tail is just dazzling. So let's progress here. You can see, so right there it's with Capella. That might be a pretty nice composition. May 31st around 10 p.m. to the northwest. That one looks pretty good. Let's progress here and see. We can maybe keep taking a shot at it up through the first week of June. But boy, oh, after that, that's going to be really low. So there's your evening opportunity, kind of that May 20th through the first week of June, around 10 p.m. to the northwest. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about focal length here. And really one of my go-to sources has been trying to follow the southern hemisphere imagers and what they've been capturing. And really, Gerald Raymond from his observatory in Farm Tivoli, Namibia, has been producing just the most amazing results. Now, he has a pretty long focal length telescope. He's got a 12-inch, I think that's like an f4 telescope. So he's been using that to capture the image. And as we're seeing here on the screen share, this is a 6-panel mosaic. And I've seen some others on Sky and Tel that, if you look at this Bob King's article, he has an image, of course, also posted by Damian Peach, another world-renowned photographer. In this, they're citing the tail of being 8 degrees long. So the reason I'm going through all of this is the focal length you select is going to really determine how much of the tail do you really want to capture, how much darkness do you have to image within, and how much resolution do you want. For me, I think I'm going to try my 250 millimeter Redcat 51, and hopefully I can set both of these up, my 400 millimeter focal length f2 Rasa Celestron Rasa 8. I may not get the full tail. I might switch and go up with something as short as an 85 millimeter focal length. I think you could go there. 135 millimeter focal length looks to be really nice. I don't think you can make a mistake here. Use the focal length that you have, because I think there's really a nice composition with the nucleus plus the tail at a higher resolution. And then there's also a great composition with the nucleus and trying to catch the entire length of the tail. Is there an opportunity here to capture it in the landscape? I think there is. Again, we're going to have to just see how bright this tail is relative to twilight. And can you find an object in the landscape? Maybe a longer telephoto lens, 185 millimeters, maybe even 50, maybe even a normal lens, with a nice foreground compositional element, a nice tree, a nice structure. I think there's the opportunity to capture this in the landscape. I don't have that composition in mind yet. I hope I come up with one. But I think there will be some pretty cool compositions in the landscape. We need to talk a little bit about exposure times. And based on what I'm seeing here from the southern hemisphere, probably a 30-second. You might even experiment with some shorter exposures, especially if you have a longer focal length and you really want to nail the resolution of the nucleus and the tail. So maybe even go shorter than 30. But I'm thinking start at least with 30 and benchmark off of that. Probably less than a minute. I don't know that you're going to go for a minute unless you're really guiding on the nucleus, because these imaging windows are going to be 15 minutes, maybe at most, total imaging time. Like I said earlier, I do think there's an opportunity to capture this in the landscape. And don't underestimate that what you could do is stack 4 or 5 Comet exposures to help minimize the noise. Maybe if you have to shoot at ISO 1600, maybe even as high as 3200 to shorten your exposure to freeze the landscape. You could stack 4, 5, 8, 10 of those Comet images without tracking. This is just tripod based, over top of your base landscape image to help reduce the noise. So that's a technique to consider when you're trying to capture this comet in the landscape. Goodness, looks like we have a cool opportunity. I'm really anxious about this. I hope the weather works out. If not, I'm going to try to go somewhere where the weather is going to work out. Wanted to say thank you so much for subscribing. We're almost to 800 subscribers, so thank you so much. I really appreciate it. If you try to image the comet, let me know what your success is. Let me know what your plans are, and I wish you nothing but the best on capturing Comet SWAN over the next 2 weeks. Hey, everybody, good luck and clear skies.